begun already. I think the crowd's going to be friendly, I tell you. Okay. I'd like to begin this event by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather here today. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Okay, thanks all for being here. This is exciting, and what a wonderful welcome. Hello everyone who's on the stream right now. You're part of the event too. I know you've already done it, but can we please welcome this gentleman back? So how tonight is going to work? I will ask Howard some questions. You will forgive me for the quality of those questions. then after a little while, we'll take a break. And for those that haven't already, there is a stack of cards that look a lot like these out there with pens, and you can write down the question. After our short break, we'll come in and we'll ask a selected number of those questions. We won't ask them all, just a selected number. After that, we will then have a book signing with Howard. And have people got their books already? Right? They've been flicking through it? Yeah. Very good. Okay, so let's begin. So Howard, it's been 4 years since you were last here in Australia, in your other studio. What in that time is new for you?
First of all, doesn't it feel good to be back? It feels very good to me. It's as if we just put the nail in the coffin of the pandemic. Yeah. Little did I know in 2019 that was going to be the last time for quite a while.
Yeah, because it was twice a year for practically a decade.
And at that moment,
Sydney.
as you remember, yes, Sydney.
Yeah.
As you remember, there was a really down moment for both of us.
Yes.
Because I thought if people are fighting for their lives, who's going to want to study acting? And teaching for me is not just what I do, it's my identity. And I thought that it was over. And we had those conversations, but we didn't know if we would survive.
Yeah.
And you know how so many people say they knew, I didn't know. We were done. And why I want to share that is because sometimes in your darkest moment, you don't see the good that's ahead. I think everyone needs to hear that. Because I was in the darkest moment. I thought the whole thing was over, my life's work. What would I do? And we all started to brainstorm and discovered Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was before the pandemic. And not only did we survive, we thrived. We did better. And both studios grew out of necessity and panic.
Yeah.
But we started to innovate. Would we ever have innovated in the ways that we did, integrating online?
No.
And now I'm able to work with the full-timers many times during the year, not just in one little block.
Yeah.
And things are better, I think.
And it's not considered lesser.
It's not.
No.
I'm able to check in with progress all year.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to do it.
Well, since you brought up the pandemic, in the revised edition of your book, you talk about working with Austin Butler during the pandemic, and you said that really gave you purpose. Can you elaborate a little on that reference in the book and tell us what it was, if you can share, that you were doing on, say, an average session with Austin? Because this was obviously for elders.
Well, first of all, it was a Monday night at the studio, and I had my ongoing Monday night masterclass, which I was intending to teach. And I got to the studio and the calls started to come in. I think I've been exposed, I better not come. And I turned to Becky and Ian, who were both the administrators, and I said, we better cancel. And then Tuesday morning, for the first time in my adult life, I got up with nothing to do. Not by choice. And it was the strangest feeling. I had several days of Okay, I can only talk to the dog so much.
And to elaborate, I'm quite familiar because we have to negotiate your calendar every year with your calendar in LA. I'm very familiar with just how much you are working, and then knowing that between that you are seeing your private clients as well. It is, you do a lot. So that must have been very different.
It's very strange because it was an unplanned vacation,
Yeah.
not a welcome one. Because luckily I have a career that I love, and I love teaching, and all of a sudden all that was gone. And at the same time, we'd already been working on Elvis, but Tom Hanks got COVID and the production stopped. So Austin was here with nothing to do, and I was there with nothing to do. So almost every day we worked, and we had both outlined Elvis's life. We knew all the events that were not in the script.
Right.
And we worked scene by scene on personalizations, on connection. If Austin had done an imitation of Elvis, he might as well have signed up for a job in Vegas as an impersonator. Can you imagine one more impersonation of Elvis? It would have been career ending rather than award winning. I was aware of that at every moment that we worked on it. And because I know Austin so well, we were able to constantly merge his personal life wherever it could intersect.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it kept both of us focused because it was a strange time for him as well.
And it was certainly true here. Was it the same in Los Angeles that when the lockdown came, it was, really stressful and tough for everyone, but I certainly as well felt amongst actors that there was an opportunity at that point to focus on the skill and to work on craft without knowing that there was no work to be had. There's nothing out there. I can't book a gig right now. And we had some of the longest lockdowns imaginable here. But what it did, I noticed a pivot to craft and technique amongst actors, getting around to doing stuff that they perhaps hadn't done or hadn't had the time to focus on or couldn't prioritize. Was that the same in
Yes.
LA?
And let me say this very powerfully for all those who make fun of what we all do. Where did everybody turn during the pandemic? What were they binging? So, first of all, where do people turn? They turn to entertainment for survival. So think about how important what we do actually is. And what was amazing is so many actors wanted to use the time productively to work on their craft.
Yeah.
So it's been an extraordinary thing because I talked for years about doing stuff online. Would I have ever? You know what I mean? I'm at a certain age where certain things are challenging. But we did it and developed an entire program.
Yeah.
And now there are people in class all around the world at the same time. I've had students in Russia. I have a student in Dubai who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take a class because he wants to be in the class. The dedication of artists to continue to grow, even if the world is ending, we are going to get better at our craft. So, there.
Well, because you brought up that, I know, but now everyone in this room knows and on the stream, you do have these, you do teach, your classes go global every week now. And so your journey, if I've got it right, goes from Rhode Island to New York.
Boston.
Boston, okay. Then New York, then Los Angeles, then Melbourne, and then now the world.
Yes! Taking over the world! Yes!
I'm assuming that when we started out being Cranston.
Very good.
Yeah. Is that a shock to you?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course it is.
Do you wonder what might be next?
After the world? We're going to Mars!
Is there stuff now in the technique itself, not just in the delivery of it, but in the technique itself, that is informed by lockdown and forcing to, having to go online and Zoom classes? Is there something that wouldn't be there, technique-wise, if it wasn't?
Well, yes, I had to adapt the technique class for online.
Yeah.
And so, for example, transference, when I would teach it in person, you have another partner to work with. So I developed an exercise, I call it Dakota, where you choose a photograph. Doesn't matter if it's male or female, you name it Dakota. And it has to be somebody that you are neutral about it, a random photograph, internet or from a magazine. And they bring it to that class and they use the photograph. And I tell them, look at something in the expression, and I give them either love, anger, or jealousy, which is the three easiest transferences. And then they end up making up a dialogue to the photograph. And in a second, they're able to do it. And those who end up with love tend to then keep the photograph after class. And those who end up with jealousy or anger, but they realize how powerful the transference can be.
Yeah.
So yes, I had to develop techniques that could be taught online and still achieve the same things. In scene study, we give scenes from plays. In my online classes, it's television and film. But the self-tape I use to teach the fundamentals of techniques. So a lot of things do apply.
And with self-tapes, again, that's part of the additions to the new book. For those that haven't read it, like I haven't had that benefit yet because I only got it tonight. What is your opinion of self-tapes?
I think it's the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
I do. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
An actor used to give 3 auditions. One on the way, one there, and one on the way home. And usually the one on the way home was by far the best of the 3. And this is what I would hear. They kept me waiting for almost an hour. Ran into somebody in the lobby I can't stand. Casting director can't read very well. Those were all the complaints. Or I blew it in the room. I got nervous. You get to control what you send. That being said, it better be good. Which means it has to be technically good, the way it's lit, the way it's shot. We want to hear you. You don't want to be in front of an open window with a parade going on behind you. You have to know how to handle all that. Plus, you get to choose the reader. And we love mom and dad and the family dog. But don't let them be your reader unless they're an actor. Because a bad reader is a reason to flip a tape. So you get to control it and you get to choose what you are sending in. And then, let me add this because you're going to hear the advice all the time. Do something to stand out. Be good! It will stand out. And you hear that, because casting directors will tell you, well, if you don't capture me in the first 20 seconds, and the actor thinks they have to do something really unusual and crazy, which is going to get them to go, next. Be honest, be authentic, use yourself authentically. That will stand out. So you want to stand out? Be good.
I think it's a great democratizer as well. I mean, allowing for limitations in the recording environment and technology, I think it puts us more on a level playing field, which I think is great.
You do not have to be in Los Angeles. You can be anywhere in the world, but I had a student who was on his honeymoon in Bali, and he has a portable kit with backdrop, lighting, everything. He booked it because you can't tell that he's anywhere other than in a professional studio. So if you're going to invest in anything, invest in a good home self-tape. You don't have to spend a fortune, but you have to have lighting, you have to have backdrop. It's got to be technically correct.
I was thinking about the auditioning process and Los Angeles being one of those big hubs for that now. And you may have a sense of this or not, but do you with the advent of streaming services, is there a shift? It used to be when I was younger that pilot season was a real thing. And that, LA would be flooded with an extra 200,000 people all coming for 2 or 3 months for pilot season, something like that. Has that now finished? Has that changed?
There tends to be a concentrated time from January to April still, but not the way it was.
Right.
It's spread out all year.
Yeah.
And things are constantly casting.
Yes. Yeah. And I certainly know that streamers like Netflix and more less likely to do or share anything about what motivated you to write a new book.
I've grown. It doesn't stop for us either. And I've changed my thinking on certain things. I didn't even include the collage exercise in the original book, which is I used to use in New York.
Yeah.
But I realized, especially since teaching online, how much what I now call garbage backstory there is. There are so many ways to go off track. Those of you who are going to do masterclass with me, there are so many ways to go off track with backstory because we think we're being creative. And I'll give you some examples. In my technique class online, I give an exercise, reporter. It's a reporter reporting on the details of a murder. It's short, it's simple. What should the actor do? What station do you work for? Do you think the right parties have been apprehended? Who was the witness? What did the person who was murdered do for a living? Where was the crime, etc. That's how you use the 8 steps. Okay, the tape goes on, and this guy is crying his eyes out, sobbing as the reporter. And it finishes. And I said, "What were you doing?" "It was my sister who was murdered." No. You are the reporter reporting on the case. Your sister was not murdered. Another one, poor reporter. Another one, the anchor asks, what exactly does the magistrate have to hold these 2 men overnight? And the reporter answers, "That's a good question, Larry," and explains. Okay. One person does this. "That's a good question, Larry." What were you doing? What were you doing? "Larry tried to rape me." No, Larry is the anchor. And the best of all time, poor reporter, send one. She's got a stain on the front of her shirt. And I'm looking at that going, what? And the stain is growing. And by the end of the tape, it's this big. Wait. What were you doing? I decided the reporter was sweating, so she rigged water to trickle down and strike her, and it's growing. It's the blob. So that's the type of thing that I call garbage backstory. Because the actor is trying to do something unusual. And guess what? They will show that around the casting office.
Oh, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. When I was looking at your book, I was very relieved, as I think I've told you, to see a certain exercise in there, which I remember you flagged years ago that you would put in a new edition. I was like, it's a great exercise. It's to do with swapping out the characters' names for your real names and then see how personally you take the material and the scenario. So I was hugely relieved to see it in there because I've been rattling that off, wanting to look important in class for a long time. Is there anything else in there that you can share that you knew for a long time?
Yeah. Well, definitely, since self-tapes have come on the scene, that was one of the things. I didn't even mention monologues in the original book, and I regretted that because they're still used sometimes. By the way, most of what you all call monologues are not monologues. They're sections of scenes where you have the balance of the dialogue. A true monologue, you're alone. So someone will say, "Oh, during my monologue," it's not a monologue, it's a conversation. And just because the other person isn't speaking doesn't mean you aren't reading their behavior. Don't get me. So there are definite things that I wanted to say. There are things I wanted to word differently. The name exercise. First of all, you can tell an entire story by the way you say somebody's name. Do you realize that? Just by the way you say somebody's name. And when there's a lot of artifice, the minute you, right, because I could call you, look, Theodore, but the minute I look at you and I say, look, Phil, it affects.
Yeah, I felt that.
And by the way, Phil, I'm so grateful to you for this.
Likewise.
But anyway, it's a simple action. And so when you find yourself reaching for something, the minute you use the person's actual name, you're going to start speaking in a more conversational tone. And it takes away, the minute you're reaching for the character, you're going in the wrong direction.
And only because you brought me into the conversation.
Yes.
I was, as I shared with you and shared with you yesterday, I was so touched by the reference to the Australian studio and Patrick Constantino and selfishly myself in the book. And it's nice to have the opportunity publicly in front of other people to tell you just how much this place has meant to my life. It's just, I am the luckiest guy. I get to go to a job that I adore every day with amazing, talented, passionate actors every day and get to share this work. It's not lost on me. When Patrick contacted you over a decade ago, there was no idea who we were or what it would be like. I assume you hadn't been to Australia before.
No. It was always on the bucket list. So I'm happy to come.
The trust and the faith you showed in coming, and then in the brief time that you worked with Patrick and then myself, to agree to continue this journey. Is there anything that made you make that decision, or what informed that?
Both of you. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do we have, this is our youth here tonight?
Yeah.
Raise your hands.
Do you have it?
Up there, okay. I'm saying it because the first scene that went up in Sydney, and back then I was younger, I got off the plane, showered, and went right to the theater to teach. I could not now do that. The first scene that went up was This Is Our Youth. And the actors didn't know where they were, why they were there, or what it was about. And I thought, good Lord, and I was jet lagged. And I think, what have I done? And it's going to be all day. But what happened was, when the reworks came back, the jumps were so profound that I thought, oh my God, they're talented. And they want to learn, but they have no technique. I could make a difference. So I felt that profoundly. And there was an energy and excitement. There's something in the water here. And I know there's not nearly enough work for actors. There isn't in LA, let alone I know Australia. But the talent level is so high. And I think the majority of you are choosing this because you love the craft. In Hollywood, we get the stars in their eyes, people as well. Here, I find more people choose it because they genuinely love it and have talent for it. And so all of those factors, but it was the integrity of the way everything was handled.
Right.
And I didn't have the props I need the first master classes, but boy, we have them now.
Yes, we did.
And there's no difference for me in teaching in LA or teaching here. It's the same.
Yeah.
Only here I have the funny accent. But
I love, I personally really love hearing Stevie Lopez, if that, was the last person that I was talking to about this, and this was only a couple of days ago as he was coming through to prep for the masterclass, is that anyone that ever makes that journey from here to LA and then comes back, They all say the same things. It's exactly the same. It's just exactly the same. I walk in, hi Howard, and hi everybody else, and you're welcomed, and you come, and
It's the same
local community.
Because we attract a certain kind of actor.
Yeah.
You have to be talented, but you also have to be nice because we don't tolerate bad attitudes.
Yeah.
And so we tend to attract good people, creative people. However, I'm going to throw one of your countrymen under the bus because he threw all of you under the bus. Jordan Ibarek is in my Saturday ongoing scene study.
He's on the Dan Murphy's advert I drive past every day on the freeway. Yes.
When I announced that I was planning to go back to Australia, he said, "Oh, what do you need to do that for?"
Oh, Jordan, if you're watching. Wow.
He has just thrown his entire country. Because, you know, he's got his scene study class. He's all fine. So,
May his commercial get cancelled.
no. But it is the same on both.
In the book again, something that was a real surprise, which I absolutely adore, is on almost every page there is a quote, either on the left-hand side margin or the right-hand side margin. And as I was going through and reading, every single time I thought, yeah, that's the most important sentence on this page, I'm going to highlight it. It was the quote. And then every single time, there's a little quote on the left-hand side. Did you decide on those, or did you hand it to someone else and say,
No, I just
tell me? With the ear or the opposite ear?
They helped me a lot.
Yeah.
But no, I decided on the quotes that I wanted. But it was Becky who thought, let's put them in the margin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that, she had seen that in another book.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. But that's again from years more experience. I wrestle constantly with, could I say that better? Could I be clearer? And so it gets distilled. Listen, you're all getting me at a good time. I am old enough to have acquired some wisdom, but I'm young enough to still have some energy and my mind. So I'm getting at a good time.
Because it's genuinely brilliant, because in the previous version of your book, I've got 3 different coloured highlighters that relate to different types of notes that I want to remember. And in the new version of the book, and you know, there's so many highlighted sections throughout the whole book. And in the new book, I've only highlighted 2 sentences because the quotes on the side just encapsulate everything on that page and everything on that page. If you read it, that will be your prompt to remember it. So it's fantastic. You've got the audiobook coming out soon.
Yes.
And then there's
By the way, which made me sympathetic to all of you because I wrote it, I've got the script in front of me, and I'm still making mistakes. If any of you have done any of that work, it's challenging. And every time I do anything in that area, I go, oh boy, they do smart.
and then you've also got, and please correct me if I'm wrong, something, a bit of a workbook
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
coming out in January.
Great. How, you know, as Mr. Corey might say, pie in the sky, how do you hope they work together?
It will plot out a way of working on each thing. So instead of leaving it just to, okay, develop your emotional recall journal, it's going to guide you through the steps of it. And it's nice to have something to be accountable to, where you've got it all there. Okay, have I done that? Have I done that? Have I done
So
that?
do you feel there's less room for deviation from your intent as well?
Yes, I think it clarifies things,
Yeah.
but it also gives you a step-by-step diary way of approaching the work. And I think that will be helpful.
Right. And do you imagine that could be done? I mean, ideally you work with people, but that if they don't have the opportunity to work with you, then that helps them understand your work better.
It will.
Yeah. With the book again, I had assumed wrongly that all of the new aspects would be in their standalone chapters or headings, or it would be put at the end of a previous chapter. Here's a little addendum, something like that. And I was completely wrong, and I was overjoyed by that. Just seeing how you've laced in new ideas, clarified things, brought in different references. It's really very good. How long? How long did it take you to? Did you arrive at that quickly, and then how long did it take?
No,
you
nothing's
to
easy. Nothing's easy. It was a process. And Becky and Ian are so helpful to me. They'll challenge me and say, why do you think that? Or is there a better way to say that? That helped me enormously.
So for those who don't know Becky and Ian, they are.
Ian now is the new Rick of Rick and Morty. Oh, he's left me. Put his career ahead of the studio. But it's a wonderful break. Becky and Ian have been my team for so long, and helped me so much with all of this, which is why I credit them.
When you, with the first book, am I right in thinking that part of that was created through an initial interview process?
Yeah, it was.
And did you follow that process for the revised edition?
No. Writing so freaked me out initially that we did it all in a series of interviews and then transcribed the interviews, and then I worked off of that. I'm not freaked out by writing anymore. Every time you take a challenge, you grow in some way. But I don't want anybody to think anything is easy for me. It's not.
Yeah. I remember, is it in the book, or have we just said in conversation why it's called Final Acting?
Yes, it was.
Is that in the book, or?
I think I do mention it.
Yeah.
In preparation for the first book, I read Stephen King's On Writing, which I thought was brilliant and so helpful. So that led to What About Fine on Acting?
And are there any ideas in the revised? Is there anything that you've abandoned from the first book and left it out, omitted it? So no, I don't believe in that, or I'm going to come in with a new idea that makes that one redundant and does more.
No, I didn't throw anything out, but I've become more specific. I've become clearer, and I've added things that I think were missing.
Right. Yeah. I've already said this question. Oh, here we go. So, we felt the effects here as well, but with the writer's strike in LA, post-COVID, how was the mood with that? Because I mentioned earlier that we all pivoted here, or most of us pivoted here, when we couldn't work to go, okay, I'm going to focus on craft. I'm going to do that still. I'm going to look at voiceovers, or I'm going to write, or I'm going to build my home studio, I'm going to work on accents, something like that. Did it have a similar vibe, or was it? Yeah. That
Same thing. Again, it's as artists, the level of dedication is mind-blowing. And we didn't have any fall off during the strike at all. People stayed in class, they kept working.
Yeah.
Optimistic that the strike would end, but I will never forget the time during the pandemic when people wanted to desperately be in class. It's extraordinary what artists will do because they love it and they're dedicated to it.
There was you referred to bits in the book about actors that come to LA and they get their gym membership and they do a lot of that.
Well, we get a lot of gym memberships.
Yeah.
Not just it's from everywhere.
Yeah. And is that still ongoing
Yes.
to this day?
Yes. Well, first of all, you get people who roll out of bed and go, oh, I'll be an actor. And I think, have you ever auditioned for strangers? For anything? A student film, community theater, high school, college, and been the one chosen? If that has never happened in your life, what makes you think that's my path? So we get people who just think, I want to be a star. Because great acting looks effortless, but isn't, as you all know. We're about to see the Olympics. Those events look hard. They look hard, right? I don't think I can, oh, well, that diving looks, oh yeah. It looks hard, but great acting doesn't. It looks effortless. So everyone thinks they can do it. So you get people who roll out of bed and think, this is for me. And I had this one poor fellow who, he did the neutral scene in the technique class. And it was one of the worst things I'd ever seen. And that's saying something. Because the basement is awful. And I said to him, even at that, I said, are you sure this is what you really want to do? And he said, but I moved my wife and kids across country. I sold everything. Oh. Oh. And I really thought, based on what? On an idea? And so, as you all know, this is a terrible career choice. If anything else makes you happy, do that. If only this makes you happy, then don't take no for an answer. But it has to be that level of drive and passion. It can't be casual. So you better love it, because it has, even for those working, it
So further to that then, and you put this in the book as well, but what habits would you love to see all actors develop in their life?
reading, that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't have reading comprehension, and I've seen an epidemic of attention deficit disorder. People coming into class and which means they can't retain what they read. And if you don't have reading comprehension, you don't understand the scripts. Because there are certain things that writers will give you if you understand what a writer has given you. A great exercise, by the way, if you want to get better at script analysis, write a 2 to 3 page scene. You do not have to turn it in anywhere. You don't have to film it. It can stay hidden. You will agonize over time, place, locationship, relationship, dialogue, only for an actor to come along and figure out why none of that matters. But you must have reading comprehension, and you have to be an avid reader. Because where do you think most of the plots come from? Most of them are lifts from Shakespeare. So the more you read, the better. And then you have to be self-motivated. You all know that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to get out of bed on a day you have no reason to get out of it. And you've got to structure yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's developing yourself intellectually, emotionally, physically, yes. But Alexander technique, is Penny here?
Yes.
Yes. Yay. Gym to tone, yes, but it's not a bodybuilding contest, men and women. Alexander technique is going to be much more useful. Voice, body, soul. It's having good work habits. That's so essential.
Yeah. It's the other day I watched an interview with Matthew Perry, because I literally just read his book before he passed away, about a month before. It's a great book. And it's looking things up, Matthew Perry. And in this interview, is what was said on the video. He said that Jim Carrey said he wished everybody could have their dreams come true for them. Everybody. Because then they would realize that's not the answer. Which I thought was fantastic. And you may have just answered, but is there anything that you would love, if you could wave a wand and do the equivalent and transmit some information to all actors everywhere in one go, is there anything, one, two things, I don't know, further to what you just said, that you would love just every actor to know? Just know this.
Yes, well, I'd love every actor to know that the most talented people are also insecure, and not to think that insecurity disqualifies you. The only people who have no insecurity or self-doubt have no talent. They are positive they're great. That's the person running the race who already thinks they've won. And there are two Cornell psychologists, Dunning and Kruger, who did a battery of studies, and they gave tests. The people who scored the best on the tests thought they'd done poorly. The people who'd done poorly thought they had done very well. You know, on the singing shows, when they show the people pre, and somebody's saying, I'm the next Mariah, I'm the next Whitney, you already know they can't sing. Someone else is humble, and then they open their mouth and, oh my goodness. So what do talented people have in common? Insecurity. I was traveling, so I didn't get the name of the child psychologist who said it. She was asked, what do children need as raw ingredients in order to succeed later in life? And she said, insecurity, which makes them work harder, balanced by a feeling of being special, which makes them think they can do it. So what do we all need? Without insecurity, we don't work. But you need that feeling of being special to give you the courage. We need both. So on days when you think, oh my God, I don't know, that's part of your talent. And isn't it true in any area when somebody's simply bragging about how great they are? You know they're not. So don't think insecurity is disqualifying. Now, it mustn't be so strong that you can't get out of bed. You have to have balance and mental health. And we have to take care of ourselves mentally because, again, the industry does nothing to promote security. But don't think that insecurity is the disqualifier. You can read about Dunning and Kruger, it's fascinating. So that, I want that to go for everybody. Don't think it's disqualifying. I go through it, everyone goes through it.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, to finish up, before we have a quick break, get your questions ready to write down. Your answer to this earlier was Mars, but
I'm not joking.
what inspires you about moving forward, or what inspires you about right now, or what ambitions do you hold for the future? That's kind of my final question for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, world domination, actually, I lost that when I was younger. Now it's get through the day, have a cup of tea. But I personally want to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And it's endlessly fascinating to me. The human condition is.
Yeah.
I learn from every source that I encounter. I learn from reading, I learn from talking to people, from traveling. And so I wish to continue to get better because it's not dull to me.
Well, it's from you, and I say this in class all the time, reference you, say, at a certain level, the study of acting becomes the study of being a human being.
Correct.
Which I love.
And how can that's endlessly interesting.
Yeah.
And so the thing I love most about teaching scene study is you can't prepare exactly for it. I can know the material, I can know the craft. I will share this. There are 3 places an acting critique can come from. And the teacher has to know when to choose what. It can come from acting technique in general, your moment before, your personalization, relationship circumstance. it can come from the unique demands of the material. These are the things that we have to master, give them this material. And it can come from any habits that the actor has that interfere with the instrument. And you have to know which one to go to, and just enough. See, I keep evolving. I want to just say just enough to spark the actor. If the teacher helps too much, it robs the actor of discovery. So sometimes my students get mad at me because they think I know the answer. And I'll say to them, I have an answer. Doesn't mean it's the best answer. You might discover something better than I'm coming up with. And so I'm constantly playing with how much to say, what's going to trigger. And if I do it well, the actor will come up with so many new things that come from them, not from me.
Yeah.
And because if the teacher directs or helps too much, the breakthrough is mine, not yours. And that doesn't inspire confidence. My goal is to make it independent of me, not neurotically dependent. That's not healthy and it's not correct teaching. But I keep getting better at that. And I'm endlessly fascinated and curious. So that hasn't stopped, and I don't intend for it to, so bless you. So what's my goal? My goal is to improve and get better, and maybe in another 10 we'll... I say that now, okay. But it doesn't stop for any of us. We're in process, and I love the process.
Right. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Getting the signal from Claire that we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll be back in here. Thank you, everyone. You ready, Claire? Okay, great. Welcome back. Thank you, Howard. Those answers were terrific. Thank you. That was just what a great opportunity just to be up here and talk with you. I've really cherished that. Thank you. That was wonderful. So we got a heck of a lot of questions. A heck of a lot. So, and we grabbed a load, so there's a real selection here. Okay, are you ready? These are on a variety of topics. So let's start with something nice. What is your favourite memory of Melbourne? Oh, look! Oh, look! Oh.
I was going to say Sydney, but that's
There's people in here from Sydney.
no. I can't be trusted. I do that when I've been in. And boy, did I feel that. People were so appreciative of the work.
Yeah.
And it was that made me want to come back. And when you asked me, and it was in that first trip, how would you feel about Howard Fine Acting Studio Australia? And I said, okay. And you did it.
Yeah.
So this is a result of this film.
At the start of every class, I give a very quick, brief introduction as to how this place exists and how we are connected. And as part of that, I share my own journey. And I describe the work in those two masterclasses as being mind-blowing. And then I give context for that. I say, you know, I've done some of the, in inverted commas, the biggest jobs of my career before I encountered your work. I'd done stuff
on the West End and done other stuff, and then done your 3 years drama school training and then intensives in all sorts of things. And I say, it's in that context that it blew my mind, because it really does. I describe it as work that all actors should do at some point in their career, at some point work this way, because it's that useful. I love it. When given an audition, due the next day, what is the fastest and best way to do the 8 steps and connect yourself to the text?
First of all, it sucks to have to do an audition the next day. If any of you get into any powerful positions with the union, it is rude to give you 15 pages and overnight. So few people really respect what actors have to do to prepare. And then they might say, oh, but you don't have to be off book. Mm-hmm. And that's going to get you the job. No. You can lightly touch the 8 steps. You've got to start with who am I? You've got to read the script. Or even if you just get sides, you've got to know how to read it for information first. And if you are good at picking out what's actable, what the writer has given you, before you do anything to it, really see what the writer has given you. And then you're going to need to know what just happened, what was your moment before, where you are, what time it is. You're going to need them. If you have more time, you can do deeper levels of work, but you have to use all of the 8 steps, even when you have to work quickly. How many of you cook? Raise your hands. Okay, a lot of you do. If you know how to make a recipe correctly, when you don't have all the best ingredients, you know how to fudge it, right? But you know how to make it correctly. A short order cook will only ever be a short order cook. You don't go to McDonald's to learn to be a master chef. And so people who have only studied audition technique or cold reading don't develop the craft to do the best work. The best actors know how to work quickly because they know how to work correctly. So you're still going to do your best work doing scenes in scene study, doing as much as you possibly can to develop the craft, so that when you do have to work quickly, you know how to touch the 8 steps lightly, and you'll go back and do more when you get the job.
Great. How vital is a social life to an actor? Maybe I'll change that to just a life.
I think it's good to be alive. So that's important. I don't know exactly where that question is going. Does it mean socializing as a way to advance the career?
I feel it means, no, a life outside of acting.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, but let me address the possibility of socializing to advance a career. No, right? I've come across people who know everybody, and because they do that, they're an old idea. They're not the exciting thing that walks into an office. So can your career be helped by a little bit of it? Maybe, sure. But if you get known for the circuit, it's not a good thing. Having interests outside of acting, yes. Do not postpone happiness until you get something. You got to live every day enjoying your life. And that attracts. Joy attracts others. If you're comfortable with who you are, if you're living a good life, if you have a good support system, family, friends, interests. Also, in-person interviews, and even when they have a Zoom interview, they're going to ask you some things. Have something to talk about besides why you should book the role. Interests. So interested people make interesting people. Be interested, you'll be interesting. Try to be interesting, and you won't be. And so, yeah, the more you can do in your daily life to live a good life, the more you have to bring to your work, because you have nothing to offer if you're not participating in life. But I have a feeling about socializing, and that's not the best way.
And why is Sarah Hallam your favourite student?
That could have been asked by anyone here. Who asked that question? Did all of you ask that question? Was that one of the repetitive ones that so many people kept asking?
Yeah, that was half of the card.
Because Sarah is encouraging to me. She will leave me notes on my chair before masterclass. Breathe, you've got this. It's right, and don't worry, you can handle it. I believe in you. I mean, those are they really reinforce my insecurities. But I thank you. By the way, Sarah was in the first masterclass. That is one of my favorite moments in Melbourne. Sarah, this is no joke, she was in the first masterclass, and no one had made very much place. But Sarah's scene had place, and relationship, and circumstance, and honesty. And I'm looking, going, how is this happening? And I said, what did you do? She goes, well, I read your book and did the exercises. Who knew that it could work that way? So that was one of my favorite moments. And by the way, the other is your wife, Emma, doing Rabbit Hole.
Oh, yeah.
And we did not have a sink back then, but she had a tub on top of a table.
Yeah.
And they had physical life.
Yeah.
And so it was, when I could see the lessons starting to be used, it just made a world of difference in the work.
Yeah. Great. Another nice one. Someone would like to know your favourite memory with Mr. Corey.
Oh, God, we have many. I would say it's the times that we've team taught, and those are here, and it was something that only he would know, and he busted out laughing. A lot of you know now because you've had class with me on Zoom, and that is I have a China fetish. And because you never know when 200 people might stop by unexpectedly for a dinner. But it's an issue, and Marianne, I'm not fishing for a present, okay? I'd have to move. There's no room. I'm not asking do not buy me. Anyway, so I was team teaching with David Corey, and somebody had some really nice china in their scene. And I did this really subtly, so no one would have known except for him, because we've known each other forever. And I flipped it over to see the brand. And I hear out here, so you have to be careful because your friends know all of your secrets. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Oh, I love that question. This is such a Howard Fine Acting Studio question. The story of your lives is wonderful. What have you learnt most about yourself since the first book?
That's a very good question. I've learned that I don't ever want to stop growing, and that I've improved. I've gotten better, and I hope to continue that. And so I think it's again, I've learned to enjoy the process, and the process of exploring the craft, and that's, as I was saying earlier, endlessly interesting to me. So it's my own capacity to grow and to improve, and to get better at the work.
Yeah, to quote you, back at you again, something else that really has stuck with me since you said it was that, every time you grow as an actor, you grow as a human being, and every time you grow as a human being, you grow as an actor. You do the two in tandem. I found that true of teaching as well. Is that your experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I teach people not to judge characters, as you all know. I've become so much less judgmental as I've gotten older because I've made so many mistakes in my life. So you can't just look at somebody and go, right? When you're younger, you tend to see things as more clear cut.
Yeah.
You get older, you start to think, it's a little more gray.
Yeah.
And so whenever I help anybody with a scene, and you'll see this when Masterclass starts, I put myself in the shoes of that person and try to see the world from their point of view. And that removes all judgment. And when you hear me talk about each of the characters, that's what I do. I step into that person and look at the world from those eyes.
Yeah.
And then you get rid of all judgment of any character.
Great. 2 more questions. Should tone of a show be taken into consideration when preparing for an audition? And if so, how does one navigate that? E.g., a Netflix teen drama versus a crime thriller.
Well, you have, as a musician, has to understand the music that they're playing. You have to understand the piece of music that you've been handed. But you have to be very careful not to get into a how of how you're going to play something. And I'm strict about word-for-word memorization. If you are doing an Aaron Sorkin piece, learn his dialogue. I think it's going to help you. His characters are quick-witted and sharp, and so you have to understand that. If you understand a writer and other things that they've written, that's helpful too. But be careful, because a show can change week to week, especially in television, based on the team of writers. And it's not always the same. I'll give you an example. I was working with my longtime student, Jim Belushi, way back when he was doing a series called According to Jim. And it was written for him. There was an episode where his character meets up with his dad, who was played by the great Joseph Bologna. And I'm working with Jim on the show. And Jim said, "This is not funny, is it?" And I said, "No, Jim, it isn't. It's got ironic humor, but it's about a complicated relationship between father and son." The tone of that particular episode was not typical. So you still have to read the script and see what that particular episode is, not get into your mind, oh, it's sitcom, and I gotta, because again, it depends on the writer and what that specific episode is. But again, the more you read and the more you understand material, the more you understand, as a musician would, the music that you've been given. So that comes with practice and with awareness.
Okay. Final question. Over the years, you've worked with multiple amazing actors. Is this you again, Sarah? No.
Why is Sarah Hallam your favorite? Keeps coming up.
Over the years, you've worked with multiple amazing actors. What's the one thing that separates someone from the rest?
That makes somebody stand out?
Yeah.
Humility. If you begin humble to anything, you're going to do well. Work ethic. I find the most gifted people are also great listeners. Certain people can make you feel that you're the only person in the world. They're right there. And curious. And so those qualities, the qualities that serve you in life are going to serve you in your work, right? Our issues sitting here are our issues when we come up here. They don't go away. So it's everything you work on yourself is good, because any area that needs to be explored in you, whether that's your mind, your emotional life, your physical life, anything that stops you in your life will stop you in your work. I said to a young man the other day in my technique class, "Is this your passion?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I see no evidence of that." "Do you ever raise your voice beyond a very low level?" "No." I said, "Well, then you're here and you need to be there. What's going to change?" the ones who are serious, they would never settle. So if you need voice work, do voice work. If you need emotional work, I'm a big believer in therapy, but that's not the only way, but I'm a big believer in it. If you need Alexander technique, whatever you need, address it. Because the work doesn't just happen in the acting class, it happens in between, in what you do outside. And the ones who do the best are driven. And I'll say one other thing, which is a fun story. In part by the way he handled a mistake. We would work on an audition, he went, and when he went to slate, he forgot the name of the character. And he said, "Oh, silly me, I forgot the name of the character." And they told him, and he did it, and he nailed the audition, and he booked the job. On set, they told him several actors before him, the kid also forgot the name of the character. But you know what he did? He had a fit. "Oh God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I could be so unprofessional. Oh my God, I'm a moron. Please, what is the name of the character? Please tell me the name of the, I'm so sorry." Yeah, sign him up. Wouldn't you want him on set, Scott? Because he's really going to handle stress very well. Part of why he booked the job is the way he handled a mistake. Because you know what? On set, he's going to... Because mistakes are how we learn. It's trial and error. And it's messy. The creative process is messy. So many people want to be right in advance of trying. And you can't be. You have to get in there and try. And so, love the process because it's the best part of it. Bless the mistakes because they lead us somewhere else. You make a mistake and you go, "Oh, okay, that's not it." Be in that process. There is no perfection. There's only process. Be in the process. Love the process. Because to me, it's endlessly fascinating. If you treat every time you work as a rehearsal, a chance to discover, to explore, to find things, your work will be terrific. If you try to perform or try to impress, you can never use your acting to prove that you can act, including at auditions. You do your work because you love doing the work. And guess what? That's a magnet. People are drawn to that. The one thing that no one can ever give you or take away from you is joy in the doing of the work. If you have that, every time you work, whether that's an audition or class or a play or a film, television, if you have joy in the doing of the work, that's yours. And that's a present. That's what you give to the craft.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been a real joy for me. We've never done this before. This was really great. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your questions.